If you are like many of us, from time to time you have been asked, why are you Catholic? Sometimes the question isn't asked in that kind of chipper way. It can sometimes be asked like, how can you be Catholic? And they could be referring to a lot of things there. Maybe they had a personally bad experience in the Catholic Church. Maybe they are upset about a lot of the things that have been public and in the news for years, things that we all are very familiar with. Sometimes people will ask, why are you Christian? Or how could you be Christian? And there again, the same thing might be at work. Maybe there was something political that happened that they feel really upset about. Maybe there's a group of people, a small group, that is really wrapping themselves in their Christianity and doing things that are hard to watch. And so all of us are feeling affected by that. But our response to that question is something really important for us to think about. How would we respond to questions like, why? Why are you Catholic? Why are you Christian? Why are you a believer? Now, I know that there is at least one lawyer here today, so please take this with a grain of salt. But there's a saying that was also in the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, that we've been reading as small groups this week, that says, God doesn't need any more attorneys, just witnesses. God doesn't need attorneys, God needs witnesses. And that's what we're hearing about in the first reading. Moses speaks up and says, here is how to live. Here is the way to order your life. Love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. That struck me in a new way this year reading it, because now I'm the pastor of a church with a mission statement that is exactly this. You've seen the mission statement on everything, on the bulletin. It gets referred to all the time. It's God first, loving others, making disciples. That's what this is. Putting God first, loving the Lord your God above all, loving others, as Jesus says, you can't separate those two things, loving God and loving your neighbor. And then sharing that with people who are seeking meaning in their life. Our job is to witness, not to argue. It's to share why we are head over heels in love with God. Recently, I was with some parishioners who have quite a love story. They've been together over 30 years, married 25. But they got together when one of them was 16 and the other one was just a little bit older. And as part of getting a tour of their house, I got to see a picture of them taken from their third week of knowing each other. So even though there was no way to know what the future was going to hold, you can see in that picture, oh, they are smitten. And she was telling me it was very hard to convince my parents that this was going to be okay, because I was only 16 and it was my first love. And they wanted me to have a lot more experiences. They wanted me to know a lot more about life. They were worried for me. But she said, I couldn't convince them. So all I could say was, if you knew him the way that I do, you wouldn't be worried. And that's what we're saying when we're sharing our relationship with God. If you knew God the way that I do, you wouldn't be worried. If you knew the Catholic parish that I do, you wouldn't be upset about me being Catholic. You would understand. You wouldn't be focused on the things that are in the news. As we say, look not on the sins of our church, but on our faith. If you knew it the way I knew it, you would understand. The problem with taking the attorney point of view is that, for one, you feel like you have to be an expert. Attorneys know the law inside out. Objection. And you might feel like, how do I know enough how do I have the catechism memorized enough that I could ever argue everything? So that's the first problem right there. The second one is, imagine how it sounds when someone says something about God and we say, as if it's some schoolyard bully, hey, take that back. And then we turn to God and say, don't worry, God, he won't be bothering you anymore. There's something a little off about that because we're creatures and God's the Almighty. For us to believe that we're defending God, that God is in need of our defense because we're so tough and big, something is off right there. We're not trying to convince people. We're not trying to argue a point. We're not trying to show how expert we are at this. We are saying, if you knew God the way I know God, you would love God too. If you knew what my church experience was, you wouldn't be so confused about why I'm there. It's a little bit why the witness image works so well, because witnesses have to testify under oath. They have to say whatever it is that is the truth whenever they're asked any question. They have no idea where the questions are going to come from. Some are going to come from the plaintiff, others from the defendant. They're going to be examined and cross-examined. And what they're saying is, I'm just going to answer. The job of attorney is not the only one we want to avoid when we're talking about sharing our faith. The other one that is a real pitfall for us is being the judge. Being the judge. Because a lot of times the way we are tempted to share our faith, or the way we were told to share it in the past, is that we should let them know this is the only faith there is. I mean, all the other ones are wrong. If you're not in this faith, sorry, the future's not looking good. And that is never going to turn people on. You wonder why we get their hackles up when we say things like that. But what they're hearing is us in a courtroom of our own design, banging our gavel. Here's my judgment. And we know that Jesus has told us, you're not to judge. God alone is the judge. So what's happening there is we're trying to share our conclusions about our faith rather than our experience. God doesn't need judges to explain why this is the only way you can go and this is my final decision. That won't work. God doesn't need attorneys who are arguing the case. God needs witnesses. So that by the time we've shared what is ours to share, the only thing left is no further questions. One of the things that witnesses always do once they've taken that oath is they make themselves available for whatever comes next. It's a completely open and vulnerable position to be in. And that is what we're called to do with our whole lives when it comes to God. One of the images that we got in the Purpose-Driven Life this week is very challenging. It says, if your life were a piece of paper, why don't you just sign your name at the bottom? Blank. And then hand it to God. And say, you can fill in the rest of the details. I've already signed it. I've already said I'll do whatever it is. I took it to the notary. It's all notarized. You're in charge. Fill in any details you want. I'll do it. I'm yours. Two of the things that we can do if we're going to witness for other people is focus on what our struggles have been and what our passions have been. What we've gotten through because of God in our struggles, and what God has placed in our hearts for something we really care about. Our struggles are the best place to begin because we all have them, and we may not be experts in theology with fancy degrees, but we are experts in our own struggles. And we know what we've been through. And when we share our struggles with someone else and explain how God got us through, that helps them more than anything else. When we're able to say, weakness, I could tell you all about weakness. Struggle, I've been through so much. I don't come to church because I have it all together. Does it look like I have it all together? I don't have it all together. I don't go to church because I have it all together. I go to church because I don't have it all together. When we share that with people, suddenly they understand in a new way. Oh, I see now. Instead of saying, I don't know how you do that, we say, here's how I do it. God gets me through this. So when we share our struggle, we have an open door there. But then we need to be willing to share what God has put as a passion in our heart. We all have something that we really care about. For some people, it's the sea turtles, or for someone else, it's respecting human life at all of its stages. For Betty and for Faye and for the folks who run our food pantry, it's feeding the hungry. I was born on April 22nd. I didn't choose my birthday. God chose it. But if you know the calendar, you know that's Earth Day. So I have always had a kind of a special love, a little bit of fire for nature, for wanting to protect and uplift nature. So whenever I go somewhere, I already did it when I came here, I buy all the recycle bins and I give them to everybody, and we try to reduce our consumption. When I was applying to go to college, I thought I was going to go to one college, and then at the last minute, my heart just led me to St. Bonaventure University, which is a Franciscan college. And you know the Franciscans are all about ecology and nature and creation. And so I feel like God gave me this. It's not something I chose, but then I share that with others. When we share our struggles and we share our passions, we have something really valuable to share about our lives. One of the basic things we learn from coming here is that God loves everyone. We are all God's children, and God loves everyone. And there are tons of people out there who do not know that. That can be a wonderful starting point, just to be able to say, when I go to church, I remember that I'm loved. We can share our story of strength and hope, not our arguments, not our judgments, not our conclusions, but our story of how God has been there for us. Because God doesn't need more judges who share their conclusions and their verdicts. God doesn't need more attorneys arguing the case. God needs our story, our love story. God needs witnesses.